I'm a web developer based in Brighton, working for a company called StoryStream at the moment. So StoryStream, it's all about bringing in user-generated content, which is basically, so we're using like the APIs of Twitter, LinkedIn, loads of that, and that's kind of a huge part of what I work on with the team there. And it's kind of all about businesses being able to, show this content on there, like on a big screen in a shop or on their website. And I've only been there since about January. Actually, that's quite a while now, thinking it's August. But yeah, so I sort of started in January, which was a bit of a change for me. I used to work at a company that was a Ruby house, and I wrote a lot of Ruby, but now I've switched over to Python to try and just to sort of expand what I know. So I've just trying another language rather than just sticking to one. So now I do a lot of Python and a lot of JavaScript, which was a bit of a bigger jump than maybe I anticipated, but it was a good one. Yeah, it's a nice language. Yes, JavaScript was an easier jump because I've done a fair bit before, and now I do a lot. But Python was a bigger jump, and in some respects, I still probably prefer Ruby, and maybe it's just because I started as a web developer in Ruby, and I still go to a lot more Ruby events, and I haven't been to any yet, so I'm more involved with the community with Ruby, which is really nice. I love the Ruby community. I go to Brighton Ruby, I've been a couple times, and the Bath Ruby conferences, and actually this year I did my first lightning talk at the Brighton Ruby conference, which was a lot of fun. So I probably haven't dived as deep into Python yet or gotten into the community, but it's a good challenge and I'm enjoying it. So I started I went to university first. I went to Sussex University to study music informatics, which is kind of like programming music. It was algorithmic compositions and things like this, and it was a lot of fun, and sometimes working with making tiny instruments with little lights and stuff. It was a lot of fun, and we wrote a lot of things in a language called SuperCollider, which I haven't used since uni because I don't make music anymore. It was very SuperCollider language is very much just for making music and sounds, and that was a lot of fun. But it was, when I finished, it was what am I going to do now with this? I have no idea, and I spent quite a while kind of doing this and that, and nothing with it. But I was lucky enough to stumble across a job at this small company called Datanauts. It's an agency, a Ruby house agency, and they offered to sort of train me in Ruby and how to make websites, basically, and all of it from HTML through to Ruby and JavaScript. They were willing to teach me everything. So I was quite lucky with that, and I didn't really use anything from my degree. But I think it was helpful to kind of get comfortable with computers and do anything really, because it didn't have to. Where once you've done one thing with computers, you can sort of apply it to other things. So that's kind of how I got into that, and I was with them for about 2.5 years, and it was really good actually working for an agency first in many respects. You're kind of working on so many different types of websites and in so many different scenarios, different databases, and it really gives you a good grounding on all the different ways a website might be set up. So I think it was really good starting at an agency and getting a lot of experience that way. And then after about 2.5 years there or so, I decided I wanted to maybe work on a product, just to kind of almost put all your work into one thing rather than spreading yourself thin. Maybe, be one output that you can be proud of, that the company produces, that, you have almost more influence over, rather than a client saying I want this and I want that. It's a bit different. Everything's kind of done internally. You're a bit more aware, and I wanted to experience that. And also I thought maybe I should try another language, so Python. So that's how I then got to StoryStream. I applied kind of late last year and started at the beginning of this year. So that's kind of been my tech journey so far, job-wise and things. Yeah. So definitely the thing that's really encouraged me to work hard at my job and not just think of it as a job that I just turn up at every day, something that's made me think of it as not only a career but a huge passion, is going to community events and so Brighton does have a really good community for tech. So I started going to Async, which is like it was like a JavaScript meetup, and I suppose it is, but they're sort of slightly changing it to be more of a general tech meetup, you know, things that people who write JavaScript might enjoy, but so often are they ever really technical, so you can go along very much as a beginner, not knowing anything, and you'll still really enjoy it because they tend to assume no knowledge. Often the speakers are very good at saying, you know, oh, does anyone actually know this? I'm really happy to explain, and there's nearly always someone who puts their hand up, at least several, and so that it was a really nice place to start kind of feeling like there was more than just my job. There was a community of people who enjoy this, do this at the weekends, and I can build some great things, and I can learn great things and go to these talks and meet other people, and it was amazing. And I think async is brilliant for that, and I'm really glad. And I go, it's every other Thursday, and I go as much as I can because I always learn. There's always something brilliant to learn there, and the people there are incredibly friendly. So I kind of started with that, and Rosa, who did the same course with me at uni, she was the one who also started going to async with me, and it was really good to have someone to go with. And she started going to codebar in London, and she really enjoyed it, and she was trying to get into web. And she obviously was based in Brighton as well, and she was like, well, I should bring this down to Brighton, this would be brilliant. And when she first brought it down, I was still very new into the tech as well, so I was going along as a student, learning, mainly learning JavaScript because that was my weakness at the time, and I loved it. And I went every time it started every other Tuesday, and I would attend every other Tuesday. And then shortly, it became fairly clear that she needed more help. And Ryan started helping, who was also attending, and then I started helping out as well. And that was about 2 years ago now, and we started running every week. So now we run every Tuesday. We've had people who have been coming since the beginning, people have come and then have kind of moved on to other things. But I think the important thing is that we run every Tuesday and we keep going. And there's always people who come and who are like, someone was asking me a few weeks ago, she was like, oh, this is great. What's the catch? I was like, there is no catch. She was like, it can't be. There's like, you get to see inside of the office and then have a bite to eat, chat to people in the tech community around you. And then you spend 2 hours with someone who's teaching you some crazy stuff that you didn't know before, and people seem to really enjoy it. And we've had some successes because some people come along who just want to maybe they work in a sort of techie environment and they just want to not be completely baffled by what's going on around them. They don't want to feel like they don't know anything, so they'll come just to learn some HTML, some CSS, and then they'll be able to apply that at work and understand a bit more what's going on. And some people come because they want to completely change careers. And last year, we've definitely had some people move on. There's one I can remember, Siri, who was coming regularly, and she also did a lot of work on her own time. And at codebar, she met someone from one of the local companies called The Unit. And they were like, yeah, we're looking for someone. You should just come along and interview. And within 2 weeks, she had a job there. And she started, and now she's loving it. And she's really busy working away. And it was brilliant. And a couple other people recently have come along, and I know now have jobs as well in some local companies, and it's really brilliant. So you get a wide range, and it's nice to see that sort of range of people who are taking the leap, and other people who just want to dabble because it's a fun thing that everyone should know how to do. It shouldn't be something that's a complete mystery and only the people who work in tech know how this works, and it's something hidden. It's like, no, anyone can learn this. It's not as crazy as you might think it is. So yeah, we've been doing codebar in Brighton for over 2 years now. We had our 2-year birthday, I think, in May of this year. We usually kind of do a special thing with some cake or whatever. I think this year we had beers and cake. Yes, and those are the main things that I kind of are how I sort of involve myself in the community and really enjoy it. There's also obviously a Ruby group that is less frequent. It's probably once a month, but that's really nice. It's a much smaller group because there's less Ruby developers in Brighton, but it's also a really nice one to go to, and it's really good. That's where I did a short talk right at the beginning of the year to that group, and it's a really good starting point sometimes just to go to your local small community and trial out giving a talk, and that's where I sort of trialed giving a sort of a Ruby talk to them, and that was really good for me, really helpful. So yeah, those are the things I do outside of work. The whole point often of a talk is to inspire people or make people passionate and want to go away and do whatever you're talking about. which is incredibly difficult if you stand there and just here's fact A, B, and C. You can find the passion for yourself somewhere in here. It's like, come on, let's rile people up. That's, you know, that's my favorite thing about going to a conference, is when I see a talk and I walk away and, you know, 9 times out of 10, I don't have the time to do it, but I'll walk away going, I really want to do what that person just talked about. I'm definitely going to do that. That was amazing. I love what she or he was just saying. I think I saw this girl talk about making games in Ruby, and I thought, I'd never thought that you could make a game in Ruby, and it looked amazing. And there were these libraries, and I was like, I'm definitely going to do that. And it's one of the things that's, you know, I've run out of time. I've been quite busy, haven't got around to it, but I still remember that kind of thinking, oh yeah, and she was so passionate about it, and it was so brilliant. You know, those are my favourite talks for sure. It's definitely the passion that kind of oozes from the speaker. At uni, I found being the only woman, well, one of the very few women, quite intimidating. I think when I first joined, I didn't know Rosa, and there were a lot of guys, and it was all very, I mean, I hate to say it, was all very nerdy or what have you. And it was very difficult to kind of almost tap into that, to be able to share the knowledge, to be able to work with it. And luckily there were certain setups like PAL, peer assisted learning, which was, I suppose, a bit like codebar, and you could go along and get help. And I went to a few of those for course, and that was incredibly helpful. But I found it a lot more difficult there than I did when I went into the industry. I think I've been quite lucky. I'm fairly lucky in the fact that starting out with the language Ruby has an amazing community that has a real mix and is incredibly welcoming. And I think that has helped a lot. And I was the only female developer for a while at Datanauts, and then they took on another girl called Kim. So then there was 2 of us, and she was also learning and training, and that was really nice to see. And we had more people coming on board. So I think I was quite lucky there. And because it was such a small team, it never really felt, you know, you didn't really feel like the only woman there, what have you. And starting at my new job, again, I've been really lucky that everyone's incredibly supportive, and there's no sort of difference. There's no sort of strangeness around it. I am the only female dev. There's a female designer, but I'm the only female dev in the team. But luckily, I've not had any negative experiences at work, and the conferences I've attended have always been amazing. And I see it a lot now where people are really consciously trying to make sure that there's no discrimination, and there's lots of, it isn't completely male dominated. There's like, there's going to be female and male speakers, and I see it more now that people are trying to do that. Especially actually Async, the meetup I mentioned that I go to, they've really consciously recently been trying to make sure that, well, twofold in fact. They've been trying to really reach out to our codebar community, and we've been trying to come together. So Ali, who runs it, came along to a codebar and like talked about it and was like, you know, honestly, I encourage you, you don't need to, you know, you can be a complete beginner, it's absolutely fine, and be part of this community. It's very supportive. And that was brilliant. And now we try and mention when Async's going to be on, to try and say, you know, go along, it's really great. We've had them go along and they've really enjoyed it, and, you know, been really amazing. You know, it wasn't incredibly technical. You didn't need to have loads of knowledge. It was, you know, they assumed nothing. It was a really interesting talk. And then secondly, they're also trying to make sure that they have, you know, a really varied speakers. So make sure they reach out to female speakers as well as male, and try and, you know, make sure it isn't completely, you know, male dominated like it might have been. So that I can see in lots of places and in lots of tech events I've been going to, this sort of, it's almost like this movement towards really trying to make sure that it's inclusive and balanced, and it doesn't feel totally male or what have you. And it's amazing. And in other respects as well, I mean, codebar isn't, you know, purely, I suppose sometimes it may feel like it isn't just for women in underrepresented, it's for all underrepresented in tech, you know, LGBTQ, etc. Anyone who feels like they might be underrepresented. It's just trying to create that safe space for people who feel like that. No, luckily I've been really lucky. I think it's almost like come at the right time. I can imagine maybe it wasn't like this, but there seems to be so much consciousness and awareness for it, at least in the circles that I've moved in. So I think things are definitely improving and getting better. Yeah. I get really frustrated almost if I'm treated differently because they're trying to overcompensate, and I'm like, no, just take me as I want to be a good developer, and I want you to want me here or appreciate me for my skills or what I bring to the table, and not just because I'm a woman and I now tick a box or something. It's difficult to strike that balance, definitely, and it's hard to know, what's right, what's too much. But it's at least worth it. It's interesting to see people try these things, and at least maybe push it that far, and it all sort of naturally bounce backwards, I suppose. It's really, really interesting, actually. There's one event in Brighton that is kind of on this topic that I should mention. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called We Spring Forward, and it's a month-long event in Brighton. Basically, loads of female tech events, essentially. So all the local groups, mainly geared towards women. So like there's Ladies That UX, I think, Codebar, She Says, 300 Seconds. There's also an event that runs it that has it's only run twice now in Brighton. There's one called Pixels and Prosecco, which I thought of earlier when we were talking about games, and it's usually women in the games industry and showing some of the things they've built or talks about what they've done in it. And that's probably my favourite event at We Spring Forward. I always make sure I go to that one, and not just for the Prosecco. And actually that's quite positive, because it almost brings all the sort of communities together that in Brighton that are trying to sort of do their little bit and trying to help and let them have a special event, and it's almost like raising awareness for it. I just thought I should definitely mention that. We Spring Forward is absolutely brilliant event that runs in March, I think to coincide with Women's History Month. So actually, I think it's the 8th of March is Women's International Day, which I never forget because that's my birthday. So every year it's like, Happy International Women's Day. So I think that's why it's in March, and it's really good fun. We always try to do something different for CodeBar for part of that, which is really, really nice. Advice for getting into tech. I think the biggest help for me was going to events. Just turn up. Like often, if I'm going to an event that I've not been before, I just get nervous. I might not know anyone. I'm going to be alone or whatever. And I've never been amazing at that, but I'll turn up and suddenly, oh yeah, I forgot. Everyone's really friendly at these kind of things, and it will be fine. And I'll have a drink or I'll have a bite to eat. We'll hang around, and there'll be an amazing talk, and then people will talk afterwards, and I'll meet great people, and I'll feel more comfortable, and I'll be able to ask them questions, and we'll talk about work things. And I think going to these events, you've just got definitely, absolutely, just do it. It's made, I think, the huge difference to my confidence at work, my confidence outside of work. I've met so many amazing people who have really inspired me, or a lot of people. I've met some really close friends of mine now who have since helped me. Kind of, one of them helped me with my talk. One of them was helping me when I was applying for my next tech job, because he's got more experience, and I met him through the community. So he's part of the tech community. So he knows what he's talking about, but he's also just a really good friend. And I just think it's great to have just to meet loads of people in your community. But I always get really nervous when I go to a new one, but it's completely worth it, and it always turns out fine. I mean, there's going to be people there who are really friendly. Sometimes it's often just the organizer who notices you don't know anyone yet, you haven't met anyone, and they'll come up and say hi. I mean, usually there'll be someone there who will notice and be that person to come up and say hi to the new person. So I think basically in a nutshell, my biggest piece of advice is go to events and get involved, and that's you can get a lot of advice there and a lot of support. If someone is thinking they're not sure if it's for them, or they're not sure they can do it yet, maybe they're sort of trialing out and they're like, oh, I don't know, maybe this will just be a hobby and stuff, I'll just be like, screw everything. Tech is the best job. I can't believe I nearly didn't get into tech. Before I managed to get that tech job where they taught me on the roll, I was considering accountancy. Nothing against accountants, sure, they love their job, but I am so glad I'm not doing that. I love my job, and the thing I love the most is I'm constantly learning. There's always something new to learn. There's always something really cool to build. And I think I really enjoy building my own website, working on that. I just wrote my first blog on it, which was like a big moment because it took me ages, because I refused to use a blogging website and build it myself. And I just think, honestly, if you're thinking about getting into tech, it's an amazing career, and you can switch it up. You know, different languages, different areas, different kind of companies, doing all kinds of things. It stretches so far into what you can do. So I think that's just the last thing I would say if people are thinking about doing it. Just, I think it's an amazing career. So do it.